So, Fallout 76 is right around the corner, and I think it's safe to say many of us are still on the fence about the game, questioning ourselves whether we should buy it or not. And while I think that's a question only one can answer by playing the game for themselves, let's dive into a more theoretical question. Is Fallout 76 a genius concept, or is it just a big missed opportunity for something better?
Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, country roads.
When 76 was first announced, many people were disappointed, saying we could have had Fallout 5 or New Vegas 2 or something. In a way, seeing 76 as a waste of Bethesda's resources. Others were divided by the mechanics it all entailed. Would their favorite franchise's new game end up like one of those failed griefy survival games? Would it even still feel like a Fallout game? For my part, when they said there would be no human NPCs, I saw it as a nice PR move, but I was always asking myself in what ways it could ultimately limit the game and bring it to the point where it wouldn't even feel interesting to play anymore. Hello everybody, my name is Skullkid, and welcome back to another gaming discussion video. If you're new to the channel, I'm doing discussion videos about every month, so if you're interested to see more of those, definitely consider subscribing, and as you wait for that next juicy discussion video, you can definitely go check out all my other gaming related content, such as my ongoing Twilight Princess Let's Play, my indie showcase series showcasing more indie games that you need to be playing right now, or simply just one of those other wacky videos I'm doing. So anyways, if you're into that, and you're looking forward to the next discussion video, which I'm already working on right now, consider subscribing to Skullkid Gaming. Now, to better answer the great question of Fallout 76's potential, we need to ask ourselves another question. Is Fallout 76 trying to be an adventure RPG, or an online survival game? In a sense, this is one of the biggest unanswered questions about 76. A question that's at the root of so many of our preoccupations about the game. You might want to jump to a conclusion and claim that it's just another cheap online survival game, but really, it's much more complex than that. You see, Bethesda are trying something that hasn't really been done in this way before. They're trying to combine two relatively different genres of games, and they're trying to strike a perfect balance. On one hand, we have some survival mechanics, like having to manage your hunger, building and defending your base, and PvP combat. But on the other, the game still tries to follow a certain narrative, and tries to incorporate an RPG-style quest system like your run-of-the-mill Fallout experience. And that's where I think many of us are concerned. You see, what seems like a good plan on paper can give much different results throughout its execution. On one hand, there's an amazing thrill to the idea of making a shared Fallout world where you can encounter other Vault Dwellers, and where you have to cooperate to survive through a harsh wasteland. A world that could even have factions created and operated by players, and whatever else you can even dream of. The idea that Fallout 76 could be this massive roleplay adventure where players create stories is all I, as a Fallout fan, could ever want. That's what Bethesda is ultimately aiming for, and in those circumstances, the blend of these two game genres makes sense. Now, here's where it all falls flat. Not everyone intends to play a game the same way. Even if these great player-generated stories worked great on paper, you can't simply assume all players will play along with this core idea in mind. The online factor then becomes as much the enabling of a world full of possibilities, as much as it is its greatest weakness. Where many games before Fallout 76 had tried to create an experience as rich as Bethesda hopes to, many of them failed to deliver because the systems itself relied too much on players playing along. Of course Bethesda knows you can't just give all the power to the players, so that's why they're putting many mechanics in place to keep their vision afloat. But are these control mechanics ruining the very essence of what 76 has set out to be? So back to our question, what is 76 really? Is it a survival game? Is it an online RPG? Well, it sure is trying to be both, and that's what may well be its biggest problem. To put it simply, at the core, it's trying to come as close to a single-player Fallout as it can in terms of mechanics, while trying to tap into the richness of player-created adventures. But some of the mechanics put in place with the intent of keeping the game fun may be its very undoing. Is 76 trying to be too many things at once? The biggest issue that might be going for 76 might be its PvP system. You see, Bethesda have looked at previous survival online games, and were looking at the way players interact. And without much surprise, I think it's safe to say many of those games have lots of griefers and trolls, and just, you know, a bunch of annoyances here and there with the way people play. So what they tried to do is make a PvP system where you can engage into combat, yet without feeling forced into it. So pretty much the mechanic that they've put in place is that if someone attacks you, you're gonna take very little damage until you fire back at them. So, on paper, once again, it looks like a good mechanic. Only from what people have said from the beta, it seems like they might just be pushing this mechanic a little too far. People saying they could empty full clips on people and have them take maybe like 10% of their damage out. So, you might be saying, well, what's the problem here? This seems fine. The person doesn't want to engage into combat, they shouldn't have to die for it. And really, that's just the complicated part about this issue. There is no real right answer. On one hand, you can make it a little too boring for everyone else. You can feel like you have no power in this world since the other players may as well not be there, since you can't interact with them in these types of ways. And in one hand, if you don't have this system, of course it's going to create a bunch of conflict between players too. So, really, how does this work? What is the right answer? Well, I don't know. Ultimately though, if the players end up feeling too much like a damage sponge, it just adds so little incentive to go against other players, or to team up with them, or really just to do anything. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, wouldn't it be cool if players had their own factions? But what's the incentive if conflict can't really happen between them? Overall, that's just really what I feel like the feeling is for this game. There is no wrong or right answer, but depending on the choices, there's always gonna be a downside, and that's the challenge with 76. The balance of fun is definitely one that's really hard to achieve properly. Now, another aspect that I personally found really annoying from the beginning is that there are no human NPCs like in other games, and, well, I had a big discussion about this with a couple of Fallout fans myself, and here's where it all goes down. The main problem with having no other human NPCs, or really no NPCs except a couple bots that you might find in the vault, is that, of course, the whole quest system and the story is much more limited by that. You can't really have major plot points. From what I've seen, the game relies a lot on holotapes and messages and fetch quests, and that may be fun for a while, but you're quite limited in the types of things you can do. I'd be interested to know if there are like outposts in the game, or if it's just a bunch of random enemies just scattered about. Even though the world is populated with a lot of players, with all these monotone fetch quests that really don't rely on players and at the same time don't have any sort of charm to them or any relationships that make you care for these quests, really, what's the point? It might make the world feel a little bland, even though it's technically the most living Fallout world ever, as there are so many other real players with you. And then again, there are of course some reasons why they can't do this. Of course, it's a shared online world, and as in most other Fallout games, you have freedom over what you choose, your options, your dialogue options with other characters. And of course, with many players, that just would feel a little weird, or like if a player takes a quest, what's the reasoning behind having the 30th player get the same quest and bring back the same item? It's all a really weird loop that would cause many problems in the game. Of course, that just brings me back to another big issue where there is no right or wrong, but it might just feel a little bland. Now, I think one big issue Fallout 76 also has is with the undefined genre of the game. Since it's a mix of survival and RPG, it's really divisive to the players who want to play it. On one hand, you have the core Fallout fans, which are used to a really rich RPG, where your choices matter to some degree, and where you interact with characters and build out communities and relationships and all that good RPG stuff. On the other hand, you have these survival mechanics that might not appeal to those regular Fallout fans, but who might at first glance maybe appeal to people who typically play more survival games. But then again, since they're a bit trying to do both, those survival mechanics are toned down to a point where it might just not feel appealing to play in that sort of fashion. After all, what's the point of a survival game if your hunger is practically meaningless, or if going against other players feels worthless, or like a penalty almost to your own character? I think another part where this comes into play is that Bethesda's trying to market the game sort of as a Fallout game, and also as a survival game. Of course, they're sort of marketing it as a hybrid, but then again, they never want to fully admit that it's not at all like an RPG or it's going too far away from the Fallout franchise, because they're a little scared that they're gonna lose their fans, that it's gonna be too far off from the typical experience, and that none of their core fan base is gonna be interested in it. And I feel like that's just a flawed thing, is Bethesda hasn't been fully clear on how the game plays out. Now, of course, the beta's been out and people have been playing, and I feel like overall it still sort of appeals to both. But really, the mechanics are toned down, and ultimately this probably comes down to how much of an enjoyment you'll get out of a sort of game that's relatively casual, that doesn't necessarily have the biggest incentive to progress, but that's just a nice little time waster that you might enjoy with your friends. And of course that gets me to the point that this game is probably not gonna be a good single-player game. If you have no one to play with, this is probably a game you should honestly just skip out on. As I said, Bethesda's sort of trying to say, oh, this is the game and everyone's gonna like it, there's a way for everyone to play. But no, it's actually probably pretty limited, and it's just gonna be nice. It's a nice fun time with friends is really what it is. And coming back to my argument about Fallout 5 or New Vegas 2, some people are still seeing it as, well, you've spent 2-3 years building this huge map and now you're wasting all this great lore and this great potential on this game that I won't even want to play myself, or I won't even want to play at all because, I mean, it's an online game, it's survival, why should I play this? And yeah, you can look at it that way. You could say that about any studio not devoting their attention to your favorite game and getting sidetracked for a couple years on their new IP or something like that. And even though that's arguably a fair point, it's nice to see a team of developers trying out something they believe has potential or they believe can be fun. Although I am a little upset about that myself. Arguably, if this game ends up to be not so good, yeah, it's a missed opportunity to do something better all out of all that lore and that huge, nice-looking map. But, I mean, you could say that about any game, about anything. Hopefully Fallout 76 ends up being good. Now, one big issue that I hadn't really realized, but that actually came to my attention recently in one of Blunty's videos, there is no push-to-talk option for the voice chat in 76. And at first glance, that doesn't seem like much, but here's the thing, Fallout 76 is a great voice chat game. Of course, the whole idea is you feel so immersed in that world if you meet Vault Dwellers and can communicate with them and make trades or deals or decide to cooperate, go on a hunt, go on a quest together, whether it's with your friends obviously, but even with random people. It's about survival, it's about building a new world, and it's about cooperating with people that you just randomly encounter as you're trying to go for a Scorch Beast. And, well, I mean, who wants constantly on voice chat, really? You want to be able to talk to people in your room, you want to not feel like you're spamming all the sounds of whatever snack you're eating while you're playing the game, or even then, you might have one of those annoying people in your game and you just want to mute all of the voice chat because it's super annoying or something. And that's a valid issue that I think Bethesda really needs to focus on for this game, because without push-to-talk, There's so much incentive to just turn off the voice chat because of all these immersion-breaking things that you'll encounter in the game, and really once you turn off voice chat, the personality and the implications of being with other players just completely disappears. Then again, it always comes back to the argument of, it seems good on paper. It seems good on paper that you're always constantly talking to people in the game, but realistically, if you have no way of turning off your mic, people are just gonna turn it off permanently, and then all the immersion is gonna go away from the game. So with all these mechanics that only seem to make the experience more shallow, what does it all boil down to for Fallout 76? In a way, it's a game that's so scared of encountering griefing issues that it might limit its own strong points a little too much. The PvP system makes it feel unappealing to go hunt down other players, and the flawed voice chat doesn't entice you to cooperate with someone you randomly encounter. After finding little interest in interacting with other players, you may find yourself looking at the story and quests that you can complete. But once again, this whole idea is limited by its lack of NPCs, keeping the system practically limited to mostly fetch quests. On the bright side though, Fallout 76 can be proud of the world it created. Bethesda has always excelled in their world building, and the sense of exploration and discovery it gives to the players. Although 76 may not be fully realizing the full vision the creation team originally had, due to limiting factors in players and in their control mechanics, the game strives to be a great co-op game. One that two Fallout fans can simply enjoy for being in the world of their favorite franchise together. Even if its narrative is limited and its interaction with fellow dwellers shallow, remains to see if 76 will become a tedious loop of chores, or if it'll strive to be a never-ending, engaging gameplay loop with friends. Ultimately, Fallout 76 is, from what it seems, going to be an evolving game that Bethesda is going to be tweaking, and to some extent adding in new things to do. Although it strays away from its core Fallout roots, it's a different type of fun. One that might have you log in after a day of work accompanied by a friend or two. Sure, it's a bummer for some that all those years of development have been spent on a game you might not be into, but in the end, Fallout 76 represents game development at its best. A team of people with a novel idea, simply wishing to bring it to life. So with all that said, let me know if you're planning on picking up the game. If I ever end up picking up 76, I'll be sure to make an updated video on how I feel about the whole thing. Anyways guys, if you enjoyed this video, consider giving this one a like, and maybe even subscribe for more discussion videos. I am already working on the next discussion video, but in the meantime, check out these videos right here on screen. Really interesting stuff, guaranteed! And as always, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day everybody, and I hope to see you in the next video.